This has Mets fans very concerned as we have more roster updates to go over. And honestly, at this point, welcome to Flushing. We got Dicky Lovelady, dizziness, and people with bodies in their elbows. Yes, I kid you not, that is an injury that Sean Manaea is currently dealing with on his rehab assignment. And speaking of rehab assignment, we're going to go over a couple of them from some guys that are currently on rehab assignments that we desperately need back in the pros. We're also going to go over our guys that just got demoted to AAA. How's Luis Angel Acuna doing? How is Francisco Alvarez doing? And we also have to go over 4 roster moves that the Mets made, because with this bullpen being really thin and really worn out, it seems like every single day the Mets are making a roster move. So plenty to go over, and it's only on Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. I'll take you through it, and here it is. I always like to start off with some statistics. You know what? And today's stat is that 70.2% of you that watch these videos are not subscribed. So please do me a favor, do us a favor here at Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about this wild injury from Sean Manaea. So as you may or may not know, Sean Manaea started off this season on the IL with a right oblique strain, and he started his rehab assignment, and he's been doing pretty well. He's already up to AAA and pitched most recently on Thursday, June 19th. He went 5 1/3, gave up just 2 hits and 1 earned run with 7 Ks in his rehab start. He was looking really good, and as we'll hear from Anthony DiComo in just a little bit, he was basically on the verge of coming up to the big leagues, but after the start, he was abnormally sore, and that prompted an MRI on Monday. And we will now hear from the experts, starting off with DiComo. How did this MRI go? Well, he says, quote, Sean Manaea was about a week away from making his season debut when another setback struck. An MRI taken Monday revealed a 7mm loose body in Manaea's left elbow. I still can't believe that's actually an injury. That is honestly comical. That's bad news. The good news is that Mets officials don't anticipate this costing him more than a few additional days on the injured list. Specifically, this would be about 48 to 72 hours. That's what we were hearing on Sports Night last night on SNY. Manaea received a cortisone injection Monday and expects to return to his minor league rehab assignment July 1st or 2nd if all goes well. He could potentially debut 5 or 6 days after that. So basically, Manaea will return right around the All-Star break. That's pretty similar to what I originally anticipated for the timeline of Manaea's injury. But despite the negative news, President of Baseball Operations David Stearns is remaining positive. He says, quote, sometimes you can pitch with these loose bodies for your entire career. I don't think it slows us down too much, hence the 48 to 72 hour shutdown that we're originally going to hear from Manaea. Then he'll begin to bump it up. He'll go back to baseball activities, and hopefully he'll make one more rehab assignment like we heard around July 1st, maybe July 2nd, and then a couple of days later he'll be back with the big league roster ready to pitch. But before we do that, we have to go to Dr. DiComo of MLB.com. He's got a definition for these loose bodies. What in the world are they? Well, DiComo explains. He says, quote, those images revealed a loose body, which is typically a bone or cartilage fragment that breaks off the elbow. Doctors told Manaea he's not at risk of having the fragment rub up against his elbow ligament, making this more of a pain tolerance issue than anything. Remember the last time, though, that we heard a pain tolerance issue? That was with Francisco Lindor with his broken toe, and the stats really haven't shown Lindor being great of late, so I'm more happy with Manaea taking a couple of days, resting, and then coming back to the big league roster ready to go fully healthy. To continue with the quote, DiComo says, the cortisone injection he received is intended to reduce inflammation in the area, limiting the amount of discomfort Manaea feels. Again, you pair that up with a couple of days of rest, and hopefully he should be good, but that's only for the remainder of the 2025 season for the next 4 months. Afterwards, when you get to the offseason of 2025 and beyond, DiComo is a little concerned, as he says, quote, whether Manaea will need an operation after the season is a different question, depending entirely on what happens over the next 4 months. For now, Manaea is focused on making it back to the mound within the next couple of weeks. So unfortunately, surgery in 2025 at the end of the season is not yet off the table, But Manaea himself says that surgery is going to be off the table for the time being. He says, quote, "I don't really have any frame of reference. Never dealt with anything like this before. It's definitely something new for me. I hope I'm not just grinding every single outing. I hope this thing kind of subsides and I'm able to pitch through it. It's not that serious, I guess. I mean, it is, but it's not like Tommy John or something like that. I don't think surgery's on the table right now. I feel like I'm so close. Having hiccups like this is very unfortunate, but I know we're doing everything we can to make it right, and I'm going to pitch to the best of my ability whenever that is." So, despite the setback for Sean Manaea and the really weird injury, he himself, as well as David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza, are all pretty positive on this front. They think it shouldn't last super long, and Sean Manaea should come back relatively soon, which is absolutely vital for this New York Met team that is really starting to crumple right now. They really need that starting pitching. Get Paul Blackburn out of this rotation and put Sean Manaea in his spot. So now that we talked about the major point of today's video in Sean Manaea's injury, let's go ahead and look at the minor leagues, take a look at the guys on rehab assignments, as well as Luis Angel Acuna and Francisco Alvarez, who were recently demoted. Go ahead and check out those videos if you haven't already. I explained why the Mets did so based on the experts. And go ahead and look at Francisco Alvarez. Why was he 0 for 1 back on the 24th of June yesterday? Well, he grounded into a double play, and then he left the game because of dizziness. I kid you not, yes, he exited because of dizziness. Really? I mean, Francisco Alvarez is a guy, he was a so hyped up prospect, the number one prospect in all of baseball. And then he doesn't perform at the major league level. You heard yesterday in yesterday's video how you had that story where he could have made the swing change and he waited till the offseason to do so. And he's got all this going for him. Then he's really bad. He gets demoted. And then he takes one at bat, grounds into a double play, and leaves because he's dizzy. Well, that's that. We do have some positives, though, that came out of this day. Of course, Luis Angel Acuna did really well, hitting 3 for 4. Mark Vientos was okay. He drew 2 walks and scored 2 runs, so that's promising. And Brooks Raley on this day, the 24th, was really good for low A Port St. Lucie. Pitched a scoreless frame, giving up just 1 hit and striking out 2. So far on his minor league stint, he's looked really good with the St. Lucie Mets. 3 scoreless frames, just 3 hits allowed, 6 Ks, which is an 18 K per 9, which is really good. A 0 flat ERA and a 1 flat whip. So definitely a good sign for Brooks Raley. And when you go ahead and take a look at the box score from the 24th, it's also pretty positive on Acuna's front. 2 for 5, so he continues to rake down there in the minor leagues. Already 2 RBIs in his first 9 at-bats. So hopefully this month or so that Acuna spends in the minors can do him justice. Unfortunately, Alvarez doesn't look as good. Now, Mark Vientos looked pretty good on this day. Today, on the 24th, he went 2 for 2. That's pretty solid. But he was taken out after the 5th inning, after his walk and his run and his 2 hits. There is no reason why. I don't think this was an injury problem for Vientos. I think it's just the fact that he played the day before over at third base, then he plays another day at third base, and he's still on a rehab assignment, so he's not going to play every single day. Plus, when he gets back to the big league roster, he's probably not going to play third base. He'll probably be the DH, at least he should be, because his defense hasn't been that sound. So, besides Alvarez not doing well and that dizziness problem, because almost seems like he's going to be a wasted prospect at this point, everyone is looking good in the minor leagues. But let's go ahead and hear from the experts in terms of another guy in Jesse Winker. We'll hear first from SNY's Ben Krimmel as he says, quote, "The Mets are hopeful designated hitter Jesse Winker will begin his rehab assignment by this weekend." Manager Carlos Mendoza said Tuesday. Winker had been on the IL since the first week of May with a strained right oblique, an injury that means the slugger will be 6 to 8 weeks out of action. Mendoza wouldn't say it will be a longer time for Winker's rehab assignment, but didn't anticipate it being a quick, quote, couple of games, end quote, due to the nature of the injury and his time on the shelf. So definitely an injury that lingers, again, 6 to 8 weeks where you're out of action. That's going to take a relatively long rehab assignment, but Mendy speaks on the future of Jesse Winker as he says, quote, "He'll continue to pretty much go through full workouts here. The goal is hopefully he is DHing by the end of the weekend in a minor league rehab assignment." In fact, Mendoza mentioned how the Mets have an off day on Monday, and by Sunday, the day before the off day, he wants Winker to be in the minor leagues already rehabbing. To continue with Mendy's quote, he says, quote, "He's going to need at-bats That's for sure. And then we'll put together the plan for Tuesday, like one on, one off, and then back to back. When we're talking about that area, we'll have to watch him closely. Now, the interesting thing here is it looks like he's not going to be rehabbing as an outfielder. The Mets mainly use him as a designated hitter, and it looks like they're going to continue to do that going forward. And if he wants to play the outfield or needs to play the outfield, he'll basically do that rehabbing in the pros. As we go back to Krimmel, he says, quote, Winker, who sustained the injury making a throw from left field, that's the outfield, could still be built up to contribute in the outfield, but that isn't something the club is looking to do at this time. Mendoza said they, quote, have to prepare, end quote, Winker before playing him in the outfield again, but they aren't shutting the door on using him in the field later this season. So they might end up using him in the outfield to continue the season. We'll see as time goes on. As Mendoza says, quote, we haven't got there yet. I think the biggest thing is his bat. Even though we kind of prepare him for a scenario where we need him to play in the outfield, which we did, he still went down. So I think the priority here is to get him at his best offensively, and then if we have to continue the progression defensively, if we need to do it here at the big league level, we'll do it. I didn't have any hesitation with putting him in the outfield because I felt good with the work that he was doing, and we put him in a position. It's just unfortunate that the injury happens. And if we feel like it gets to a point where we could give him a start in the outfield, we will. So it looks like for the meantime, Winker will be rehabbing as a designated hitter, which of course will take less time than if he had to prepare both his bat and defensively and for running. So that's a good sign. Maybe we'll get Winker back a little bit sooner than we anticipated. And if we need him in the outfield, Carlos Mendoza is ready to make that rehab in the pros. So now that we have positive news here on the Jesse Winker injury front, let's go ahead and take a look at the 4 most recent moves that the Mets made today. So we're going to start from the top and work our way to the bottom. First move is that the New York Mets designated left-handed pitcher Richard Lovelady for assignment. Well, it was a nice time for Dickie Lovelady. He came in and pitched in one game for the New York Mets. That was yesterday on the 24th of June, when 1 2/3 innings pitched, gave up 1 hit, 2 earned runs, and 2 walks. So definitely not a very good day for Lovelady, and he is now DFA'd and probably will never return to a New York Met uniform, which is honestly going to be really funny if the Mets win the National League or win the World Series, because keep in mind, as long as you were on the roster for one game, even for 1 inning, you get a ring. So there's going to be so many guys that get a ring if the Mets win the NL or if they win the World Series. But anyway, next move is that the Mets designated left-handed pitcher Jose Castillo for assignment. Now, Castillo was a little bit better than Lovelady. He actually pitched a decent amount for the Mets. He pitched 11 1/3 and appeared in 13 games with a 2.38 ERA, just a very high whip at 1.941. And I think the main reason why he got DFA'd is because he was used yesterday, and unfortunately, he was not very good. Yesterday, on the 24th, he allowed 3 inherited runners to score, and he was charged with 2 earned runs of his own. So who are the replacements? Well, the Mets need a left-hander in their bullpen, so they recalled left-handed pitcher Brandon Waddle, who was pretty good. He's pitched in 4 games so far this year, 10 2/3 innings, a 3.38 ERA, 1.125 whip, so pretty solid from Waddle. And here is the latter move, the one that Met fans are probably most excited about. New York Mets select the contract of right-handed pitcher Jonathan Pintaro from the Syracuse Mets. This is the number 22 prospect in the New York Mets system. Here are his statistics: a 6'2", 235-pounder double righty, age 27. And as you see on your screen, he spent some time in Syracuse, just 1 game, pitched well in 4 innings, and overall, he's been pretty solid in Double-A with the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. So the Mets ended up giving him the nod. Likely what he's going to be, at least I hope he isn't, but I feel like he's going to be. It's going to be another one of these cycles where he pitches a good amount of innings and then goes back to the minor leagues, and we continue this cycle of just bringing guys up and DFAing and sending down others, and we continue this loop until the Mets get an off day or until this bullpen is not used every single day for plenty of innings day in and day out, and we maybe get some more length from our starters. But anyway, let's hope for the best for a Mets prospect as he comes up and could make his debut tonight in another pivotal game against the Atlanta Braves. We got an update on Sean Manaea. He's got a very, very weird injury, but it looks like he's going to be okay for the most part. So that's good news there. We got some other updates on other guys that are in the minor leagues, like Acuna and Alvarez, as well as our guys on rehab assignments. Jesse Winker is starting one soon, which is vital. And of course, 4 major roster moves, and a top prospect is called up. And again, Pivotal game tonight against the Atlanta Braves. Mets have dropped 10 out of their last 11 games. Let's go get a win tonight. Let's get our first win against the Braves of 2025. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Drop your comments down below. Let me know what you think about all this. Are these injuries weird? Am I the only one that thinks these injuries are super weird? Let me know what you think down below. Thank you so much for watching. And let's go Mets.